I'm so excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you.
We're so excited to have you. I feel like this last year has put social change on the forefront of our minds, and you are an expert in everything that's going on and how to make us feel like we have an impact. So we're very, very excited. And literally the name of your book is
Impact.
It is. And it's funny. So I co-wrote the book Impact with my co-founder, Tammy, and she often says that I am like an impact therapist because I do
Ooh, I love
think,
that. You should TM that.
right? But I do think, a big part of social change is the how, but there is so much messiness around the emotion of it all and how to approach it and how we feel about ourselves when it comes to creating change and all of these pieces.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the how, and I think it often feels so much bigger than us, and you feel so small. I'm curious, like we said, you have the book Impact. Like, what inspired you to write it with your co-founder? Were you kind of always action oriented, or was there something that sparked your interest in social impact and social change?
Yeah, so Tammy, my co-founder and I, we started a nonprofit organization back when I was still in college. So I was 20 at the time.
Wow.
And over the years, I'm sure we can talk about this a little more, but as the organization grew, we had a lot of people come up to us and start asking us how they can make a difference, how they can create change, how they can plug into the organization, how they can start their own organization, all of these really big questions. And the truth is that there is no single pathway to doing good in the
Yeah.
world. It's really all about kind of how to match up what you have to give with what the world needs.
Mm.
And so we wrote this book because after more than a decade of running an organization, we understood how to do that. And most people don't. There is no guidebook for how to create change in the world. And so that's what we wanted to do. That's what we wanted to create is the plan, the pathway that you can follow.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, you said people come up to you and ask, like, how do you get involved and how do you start to create change? What would you say to somebody who asks you that today? Like, what's the first step? Because I think that a lot of us do feel this. We feel too small to make any sort of impact, just by ourselves. How can we make a large mark when it's just one person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I say the first step is finding your North Star.
Yes,
And
I love that
your
from your
North
book.
Yes, and your North Star, it's a pretty common concept, but when it comes to impact work, your North Star is really that vision of the world that you most want to see, that you most want to create. And if you can see it, if you can picture it in your mind's eye, what the world would look like if you had your way, that can guide everything else that you do. So for me, my North Star is a world where women and girls are safe and able to thrive. And that is what I picture when I think about creating change. And when I'm deciding, do I want to sign up for this volunteer opportunity, or where do I want to donate, or where do I want to give my skills, I make sure that it falls under that end goal, because that really is the future that I want to see, that is most important to me.
Yeah, you know what I'm so curious about, because I feel like, especially what happened, this past year, and with like the whole racial movement that was happening, I
Mhm.
felt like I had all of these different causes that I wanted to lend my time to, my name to donate to. And I'm an ambassador for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and that is my North Star. But I also work with Girl Up, which you probably know Girl Up really
Yeah.
well because they're in the same space as you. And it's hard because I have so many interests, and I think we all have so many passions and interests, and we want to do everything. Do you
Yeah.
recommend us doing everything, or really honing in on one cause and one mission? Because I think I often feel overwhelmed with all of my passions, and I
Yeah.
often have to like not turn a blind eye, but also just kind of focus on what I'm doing, because I feel like if I spread myself thin, it's actually maybe not as helpful. But what do you think?
Oh, totally. So here's what I say, and here's why having the North Star is so important, is because no one can do everything.
Yeah.
You cannot take on everything. And more than that, if you try, you're going to find that after 6 months, 9 months, a year, you're going to be totally burned out. And when we think about creating this better world together, it doesn't do anyone any good to have you working for 6 months nonstop on every broken issue out there and then burning out and saying, you know what, that was way too much, and that's it. Now we've kind of lost you as an ally in this fight for a better world. So what having a North Star allows you to do is focus on what is most important to you personally, and focusing your skills and your time and your money in that area. Now, this allows you to do two things. One, we know that every issue area is intersectional. So when I talk about, women and girls being safe, racial equity plays a huge part in the ability of girls and women to be safe. And if I'm not recognizing that, exactly. And so if I'm not recognizing these intersectional issues, then I'm missing out on this huge part of my North Star, right? So I am going to make sure that, I'm showing up for the rallies and I'm donating to Black Lives Matter, and I'm finding these ways to make sure that I'm intersectional in that approach. But it gives me the grace and the permission to not have to do everything and to not have to lead in everything, right? So I'm showing up at the Black Lives Matter rally, but I'm not at the front of the march. Right. Someone else is taking that on because that is their North Star. And, from an identity perspective, that's not where I belong anyway. And I think that's really important, is that you have the ability to identify where are you going to kind of pick up the flag of a cause, and where are you going to lend a supporting hand? And then when do you just need to say no? Because you're overworked and you need to give yourself some space and some time to sustain the work over the long term.
It's like an activism fatigue, really. And I think that a lot of us did feel like that this summer, especially this past summer. It was, so much going on. But I'm curious, in that same sort of vein, do you struggle at all? I know for myself, I felt guilty almost when I started to burn out.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Or have you experienced that?
Oh my God, yeah. And this is the thing. I think all of us who do any form of activism work, the issue is that as soon as you start seeing the ways in which the system is broken, you're going to start seeing more. It's not like you have this activist revelation and you're like,
it starts piling up and you're just like, oh, now there's this and this and this. Yeah.
And now I'm buried under the weight of it all. And because I can see it, I want to fix it. I want to make 100%. Sure that I'm part of the solution, right?
Yes.
And I think that this is where it comes back to this idea that if we believe in the North Star concept, what it can tell us and what it gives us is the belief that if I follow my North Star to the best of my ability without totally exhausting myself, and Corinne, you follow your North Star, and Natalie, you follow your North Star, and we kind of give everyone the tools they need to do the same, and we support one another in doing that, then we've created that world where we see equity for all groups. So I might not be devoting 100% of my time on climate change, for example, or environmentalism, but I have friends who that is where they're focusing their energy. And I'm going to trust that if I put my energy toward my North Star, that my peers are doing the same in their areas, and we can all kind of keep it moving forward. And I'm going to trust them to do that, so that I don't feel the personal obligation to take it on myself.
That actually makes so much sense, and I love that concept because it just makes it feel more like teamwork,
and it's a collective. Everybody working together. You're saying if everybody's focused on their North Star, then one, you're getting full dedication to these causes, and you are chipping away at everything together, as opposed to, I feel like that's very relieving for me, because I like to take on, maybe I don't like to, but I take on, I feel like, the weight of the world. And I feel like, I was just saying the other day, like, I gotta get into climate change, and I gotta get into this, and I gotta, put my foot here. And I feel like I can definitely be supportive of all of these other efforts, but staying focused to what I know and do best, which is mental health. Like, that is my thing. And so sticking to that, and then supporting everybody else doing their thing.
And I think that that's cool too about like friend groups, because like if each person had their own thing, and it's like, you know, like, for example, so my North Star would probably be type 1 diabetes. I'm like, I have type 1 diabetes, and insulin is a problem right now. And so that's kind of my thing. And so it's like Corinne could support me in that. Right. And so then we would have sort of that. And like, similarly, like, I also, mental health is very important to me, and I've kind of done things with her on that front. So it is really cool that you can have a little group of people that does make a bigger impact just by
fueling
proxy.
each other.
Yes. I'm going to age myself, but it reminds me of the Captain Planet cartoon, where it's like earth, wind, fire, and like together we are the planet. And so one of the things in the book that we focus a lot on is the concept of an impact plan. And if you're a person who really likes like frameworks and creating a plan for yourself,
I need a
plan.
I like a plan.
You'll love it. But part of that design is that when you think about your impact actions that you take, you've got your kind of your big goal, your big impact goal. For me, most recently, that was writing the book Impact. For others, it might be running a marathon for a cause, or, those really big, audacious goals that we take on in our impact life. Then, and you should really only have like one or two of these big goals.
Only one.
Then you've got your like medium impact. And these are, or your medium effort impact, I should say. These are the goals where it's taking a little bit more time, a little bit more energy. You are volunteering every week or every other week. You are donating on a regular basis. You're making a monthly donation, or you're going to a new event, or you're learning about an issue every month. They're kind of the recurring things that take a little bit more energy, but you want them part of your routine. And then we have what we call your everyday impact points. And this is the really kind of low effort stuff. And that's where I think that there's room to play with those intersections. So Corinne, you're saying, you want to do more with climate change, but oh my gosh, if you do more with climate change, you also have to do more with domestic violence. And then what about animal rights? And then and it just keeps going. And this is where I think, if you think about your impact plan, maybe you have your biggest one is that you want to raise X amount for NAMI, or you want to host this big event for them. And then your medium efforts are, you're using your platform on a regular basis to talk about mental health, and you're mentoring through the network, or, these other kind of ongoing things. Your everyday impact points are where I think that you get room to play, and you get to say, you know what, climate change isn't my main issue, but it's important to me. So I'm going to start using reusable straws. Or
I just ordered reusable paper towels that I'm very excited about.
And you just got reusable tumblers for Starbucks.
I did. Yes. Okay, so that's my everyday impact point.
Hey, I like
that. Exactly. And they count. And so not everything you do has to fit perfectly under your North Star, but it gives you the focus, so that when you're really sitting down, you're figuring out, where am I really dedicating my time and my money on a regular basis? That's where those are the pieces that you want to align under this kind of single focus area.
You know what? It's funny, because I think of myself as an activist and a philanthropist, and I was just realizing that even though I work with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, I personally don't even have a big North Star goal. Like, I always tell them, like, I'm here with whatever you guys need. I'll show up for anything. I'll tell my story. But I personally never thought that I could have a goal. I always thought the organization has a goal that I can support,
that you can be a part of.
Yeah, but I had never thought to make my own goal.
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wheels are spin. I'm just like over here thinking of all the things. I'm like, oh, I've got this idea, that idea.
Well, you were talking a lot about, like, we were talking about community and, like, you know, our friends
Yeah.
all getting together, but you also talk about the power of partnership in your book. And I'm curious, you know, what brought you and Tammy together and why you feel like it's so important to have these powerful partnerships in activism.
So Tammy and I actually met through a scholarship program. We both received the same scholarship when I was in high school. She had won it a few years prior, so we met through that network. And I think that was a really powerful starting point for us because we weren't friends prior to starting She's the First. We knew each other through this connection point. But because that is how we connected, and because we shared a North Star where we did want to focus on women and girls on a global scale, all of the other stuff, we worked it out along the way. And that, honestly, my number one piece of advice, whether you are partnering with another person on hosting an event, or you want to start an organization or a movement, or you're looking for an organization to partner with, make sure that your North Star matches theirs, because everything else will work itself out if you share that end goal.
Same vision.
If you have those same values, if you're working toward the same thing, everything else is details. And we see this a lot with, like, people often ask me, how do I pick the right nonprofit? How do I know who to donate to?
Yeah.
That's tough too.
Yeah, and you see these lists online that are like, okay, go check out their financials and see how much they pay their executive officers. And side note, as a nonprofit executive, like, who tend to be women and who tend to be in caretaking kind of capacities, we should be paying nonprofit executives a lot more.
Yeah.
But the point is, you don't have to dig through a nonprofit's financials to understand how impactful they are and if they're kind of quote unquote good nonprofit. If you find the organization that you share a North Star with and you understand how they envision getting there, that's honestly, I think, all you really need to know. Because if you share those values with an organization, just like you do with people, you're going to see that it clicks and you get it in a way that is so much more important, honestly, than, let the IRS deal with whether or not they're handling their financials.
Right,
like there are people who do that. You want to find the organizations that are going to speak to that world that you want to create.
Yeah. So I actually want to kind of just touch back again on She's the First, because
your organization.
Yeah, you guys have put together this organization and it aims to ensure that girls they're educated, they're respected, they're heard, they're safe. What are some things that you guys do to ensure those things? Like, what are some of the mission goals and actionable things that you guys do at She's the First?
Yeah. So we have two big pillars of our work. The first is strengthening ecosystems, which means that we provide funding, resources, training, and networks to women-led organizations all around the world who work with girls. And the goal there is to make sure that grassroots organizations have all of the resources they need to create impact for girls. It's making sure that the systems around girls are fully supportive of them and their rights. And then our second pillar is around girl-led advocacy. So on a global level and on a local level, we work with girls to understand the issues that are most important to them. And then we launch campaigns and toolkits. We have a campus community for students all over the world to engage in local and global advocacy for girls' rights.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
It's kind of similar to Girl Up, right? Or you guys have similar action plans, kind of?
Impact plans.
Plans. Yeah, because I know I work with Girl Up and they also like empower girls to be like leaders and advocates. And I think that's just so important, is showing girls how they can also make a change in their own communities. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's really important to us is including girls in that process.
Yeah.
So it's not the adults, it's not the staff of She's the First who says, okay, here's what our advocacy campaign is focused on. We have, organizations around the world who work with girls, who ladder up their ideas and their thoughts. We actually have an advisory council made up of girls from around the world. And we have 2 girls on our board of directors, which technically makes them my boss.
I love
to
that.
make sure, right? Like, yeah, so that when we say we're engaging in advocacy, it's not talking about the issues we think girls are facing. It's talking about the issues that girls themselves raise up and say, hey, we need to be talking about this.
Yeah. Wow. I love that.
Also, you're involved in like women and girls safety, which actually recently I had this very long talk with my boyfriend about. There was that young woman in England who unfortunately was murdered while she was walking home. And I was just talking to my boyfriend and just explaining to him, and obviously he already knew this, but maybe more venting, like how walking down the street anywhere as a woman like puts you in the line of fire. And I have pepper spray on my keychain. I have a sound alarm on my keychain where if like someone were to attack me, I could pull it and it blares this loud
You can do
sound.
everything right and still be.
And it's like this way that we have to be in the world as if every man or person that walks by us could potentially harm us. And I just love that you're on the forefront of teaching. You teach self-defense, right?
I do, yeah.
And I was curious, was there anything that inspired you to get into that, or was it just kind of this narrative or collective experience that all women have?
Yeah, so I grew up actually doing martial arts. I got my black belt when I was 15 or so. Wow. And honestly, the reason behind that is because I grew up in this network of incredibly strong women, but in and out of their lives were men who were, in various instances, either verbally, emotionally, or physically abusive to them. And in my own case with my stepdad to me. And going to martial arts and going to school were these 2 places where I could feel strong and powerful and in control. And so you'll see that then kind of throughout my life, these themes of women and girls and safety and school and education, they've all kind of intertwined into who I am today. Yeah. And the thing about self-defense is that what really drew me to the dojo that I work with now, which is the Center for Anti-Violence Education here in Brooklyn, New York, is that they have an empowerment self-defense approach. And what that means is that self-defense often gets taught by your ex-cop type or even a martial artist who's like, all right, I'm going to show you how to flip this guy over your shoulder. And it's a ton of fun. Like I love it. But it's just not realistic. Like that is not the reality of women all around the world. Like you are not in the heat of the moment unless you practice martial arts constantly going to be able to do that. Dude.
No. When I'm in a crisis, I just freeze and stare. And I'm like,
okay, yeah. And this is the thing is self-defense, and this is the empowerment self-defense approach. Self-defense is anything you do in the moment to keep yourself safe. So when you look back on instances in your life, and I think as women, as just femme people, most of us have these moments where you look back and you go, I wish I had done that differently. I wish I had stood up for myself. I wish I had fought back. And the truth is that you are standing here today, and that means that whatever you did in that moment to get from there to here, that was self-defense. Sometimes the best thing you can do to keep yourself safe is to do nothing, is to allow something to happen in order to make it past that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I think we often carry this guilt because there's this unspoken set of rules about what we're supposed to do, that we are supposed to react a certain way when someone catcalls us or when somebody grabs us. And if you don't do that, then you're in the wrong. But the truth is that you should never be catcalled. You should never be grabbed. And that guilt, that shame that we put on women and girls and femme folks just because they didn't react the way that society told them they should react, it's bull.
Yeah.
The issue isn't on the way that girls and women react.
So, and especially because
for me,
a lot of the times when you react, it does make, with in instance of being catcalled or something, it does make it worse a lot of the time, and or you just don't know who you're dealing with, and it's really scary. And I think that, that's a good conversation that we're starting to have now with, people, the men in our lives, the boyfriends, to say like, of course, it's this whole concept of not all men or whatever, but it's like they really should realize how hard it is just to be a woman in the world. Yeah. To literally exist as a woman is really, and that includes trans women as well.
Yeah.
Because it's, there's so much violence.
There is. And there's no right way to respond in those situations. There isn't,
Exactly.
And I think that's why I think empowerment self-defense is so powerful. Sorry for the pun, but because it's not about giving you the right way to respond. It's about ensuring that you understand that you always have a right to safety, and giving you some tools to see what works for you that you might be able to use in the moment. And I just think that we need to take that approach with more in life, that that there is no prescribed way for a person to be, or for a woman to keep herself safe. It's crap, The world
it is.
The world needs to change to make sure that women and girls are safe. Women and girls don't need to change to make sure they're safe.
Completely. And you are such a strong woman, and I'm actually really curious who some of your role models are, or women that you look up to or inspired your philanthropic spirit.
Oh my God. My mom and my grandma are two of the strongest women I've ever met. I mentioned, I grew up surrounded by women. My mom had me young. She was 19.
Oh, wow.
And so we lived with my grandma and with all of my aunts growing up. And my mom started as a waitress and then went to night school to get her nursing degree, and ended up working, nights, weekends, holidays at the hospital. Her work ethic is beyond anything I've ever seen. To this day, she lives in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. There can be literally 3 feet of snow on the ground, and I call her and she's at work because, someone might have needed to come in.
Wow.
So she definitely taught me a lot about what it means to work and to work hard, and what that looks like. And I've also had the privilege of meeting girls and women all around the world who fight every single day for the future of girls and women around them. And so I'm surrounded by women and by girls who inspire me every day to work a little harder, to try a little harder.
Yeah. Well, I know we have to wrap things up, but I have one more question, and that is, did you always kind of have a feeling that you were going to end up in something like this, or how did it kind of evolve into it?
Yeah, I had no idea. I went to college for journalism. I was going to run a women's magazine one day, and now here I am. But I think the through line for me was always women and girls. And I think
the women's magazine,
yeah. So I think you can't be afraid to edit your North Star and to allow it to evolve with you, because you are a changing, growing person. So let it grow and let it evolve with you as you grow and change too.
I love that. And that's another way to kind of not be caught up in any sort of guilt if you're like, oh, I'm not doing the same, it is, the world changes and we have to change as well. So I love that concept.
Well, Christen, we love you. We love what you're doing. Yes. We love your book. We're going to link it in our show notes for everybody listening so they can pick it up and they can read it. And we're also going to link to your organization. She's the First. Can you tell us some ways that we can support your org as well?
Yeah. So you can find us online everywhere at She's the First. One of the biggest ways to make a difference is by becoming a monthly donor.
Ooh,
And
okay.
we, as part of that, will give you regular updates. You'll be part of an exclusive community.
Cool.
Well, I'm signing up today.
That's amazing. I love that.
Well, thank you so
I love it.
much and have a great day.
Oh, thank you both so much.
It was so good to meet
It was
you.
so great to meet you.